Hello and welcome to this edition of the Inside the Channel podcast. I'm your host, John Alba from the Channel Company, and joining me are Brian Bottalico from Microsoft and Lee Highsmith from Lenovo. And we recently had a brief conversation with Brian and Lee about AI, but we want to dig a little deeper now. So we're going to dive into the integration of AI into PC technology and discuss how Lenovo and Microsoft are helping partners and consumers alike understand the growing usage of AI. Gentlemen, how are you? How's the new year treating you?
Great so far, John. Good to see you.
Great. We started off with some snow.
That never a great way to start the year. I lived in Maine for a few years, and the thought of snow just makes my spine shiver a little bit. But I'm really glad to have you guys here to kick off the new year in a great way. What does the speed at which AI has been integrated into PC technology tell you about the future of the industry and where it's going? Let's start with Brian on this one.
Oh, just hitting it off right off the bat with a deep question. For me, it's been interesting. I've had a chance over the last 3-6 months to have a lot of conversations with customers and with partners, and I'm not necessarily surprised to see a lot of these AI tool sets being adopted so quickly, and a lot of it's just end user driven, right? We're out there often talking about how much burden and how much workload has been placed on end users and employees as businesses look to get more productive, more efficient with their labor costs. And I think end users are starting to look at AI as a useful tool to really alleviate some of that burden, right? Looking at how they can become more efficient in their jobs, how they can become more productive in their jobs. And so I think what we're starting to see is the technology providers and developers are recognizing that end users are really diving deep into the use cases of these tools and figuring out new experiences that they can drive. And that's only going to get faster. So I'm not surprised to see the speed at which it's moving, because it's just proven to be such a useful tool set, at that end user level. And partners, I think, that are out there, looking at this and talking with customers too, are really thinking about what does this mean for their business? Where can they, look at opportunities to drive it, incremental services growth and opportunity and product growth. And so, I really think this is one of those interesting moments around technology adoption that, we've seen some of these in the past, mobile phones, internet, right? This is kind of that next big jump. And so I think the speed now is only going to accelerate further.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think the internet is the most similar dimension for me, where a lot of talk initially and a lot of hype around it, but it was transformative. It went through and pervaded everything that we do and changed how we do all of those things. So, we're seeing it kind of close in from a bunch of different directions, device direction, the generative online side of things, and really more and more behind the scenes as well, all focused at really driving more rich user enablement, whether that's productivity or creativity or just being able to get through their day better. We're seeing it really provide a lot of value, and more to come every day.
I mean, it's exciting, John. I'd be curious actually if you and your line of work are starting to look and use AI in any ways, but I think it's exciting to see the creativity come in. And what all these different end users are starting to think about on how to use it. I mean, obviously, you have the classic college student looking to write an essay, right? That's an oversimplified view, but everything up to even personally how I use it every day to just stay up to speed on emails, stay up to speed on meeting notes and recaps. It's just, man, I think we're at just the tip of the iceberg on all the different experiences that are going to come from this.
It's amazing. My girlfriend was cooking the other day, and she even just popped up AI just to make sure that the recipe she was using could be improved just a little bit. So it is truly surrounding us in all arenas, but obviously PC technology being one of the true most prominent arenas that we see it in. So Brian, obviously Microsoft a leader in that specific arena. So what changes do you see across PC technology because of AI growing in its prominence?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question too. And I think we're pretty early on in this process. I'd be really curious, Lee, from the Lenovo point of view, as you look at more integrated, more technical specs of the devices that are going to be required to support some of these use cases. But, I think what we're starting to see now is The cloud has been a really powerful tool to transform businesses, and we've seen a lot of the AI infrastructure and use cases kind of start there, and they continue to remain there with the models and the compute power that the cloud provides. But as we get further and further along, more and more of these use cases and experiences are going to be required to run locally on devices. And I think with the Copilot Plus PC platform that Microsoft really announced last year, and as partners like Lenovo and our silicon providers like Intel and AMD and Qualcomm begin to, accelerate the technology kind of underpinning all of this, we're going to see more and more of those AI pieces become localized on devices. And that's just going to drive better experiences, better cost models for businesses, better opportunities for partners to really think about, how they spin up things like app development type of practice areas. And so, I think it's just, again, we're early on in this process, but I see the PC technology really starting to meet the need of that end user experience. Again, the experience is going to be central to this.
Right.
And every industry and every use case is going to be a little different. But, Lee, I'd be curious, obviously from the Lenovo perspective, where you guys are starting ahead.
So, we have talked about smarter AI for all. And when you combine that with our focus on very human-centric design, really trying to change how the device works and make it more invisible. You don't want to use your computer. You want to do something, whether it's, create or work or be productive or whatever. So, what these tools are giving us is the ability to be more personal, be more intuitive in ways that really help the device disappear in some ways. And that's really hard work. I think what's going to favor companies like Lenovo, who have such strong partnerships with companies like Intel and others, and they have the ability in-house to design from the user up. That is going to give us the ability to make things run faster, run cleaner in ways that the user probably won't even notice as the device becomes more personal, knows what preferences the user has or what they tend to do. It can automatically adjust on the fly for those things. And, all the user notices is they don't have to plug in very often for their battery life, or their PC runs fast all the time, even when they are unplugged, things like that. And the people who can do that kind of human-centered design from the ground up, I think, are going to have a really big advantage in this environment. And that's going to change how people interact with their device, how they feel about their device going forward.
Lee, I want to ask you, when something becomes so prominent so quickly, naturally there's going to be some skepticism, right? We encounter that everywhere. So what are some of the reasons for skepticism for AI integration that you're coming across?
Well, it's funny. It's been a combination, and I'll be honest and say I've been very surprised at how forward-leaning people are when it comes to AI, but certainly they also have concerns. So we have kind of 3 Ps, personalized, productive, and protected. So we've kind of talked about those first two. The protected piece has a lot of different dimensions to it. For us, one of those things is having, as I think Brian mentioned, a local LLM. So you can literally be in airplane mode, and things like our AI Now or a lot of the Microsoft tools can run in a local session that is not exposed externally. So that guarantees you a significant amount of security and privacy that is kind of unique in the industry still. And it's a big focus for us. I mean, we have what we call the Responsible AI Committee that goes through all of the things that Lenovo does, hardware and software and partnerships, and ensures that we're doing it in a way that is protected to our users and very transparent for our IT and our partners out there. We actually have a UL certification on things like AI Now, our LLM core that runs several of our tools, that is verified for its transparency and security. So those kinds of things are our focus, to try to take away that concern that users have and IT and partners have about the vague threats. Bringing things into a transparent world where they know how they can secure and manage it at all levels is something that we think is going to be important to allay the concerns and really fully embrace the opportunity that this kind of technology offers.
I'll add in, John, just a little bit, from the Microsoft perspective. Well, Lee, I thought you were going to go with, we should all be worried about the Terminator and the classic, example of where people are going to go. And, certainly there's some corners of the internet that are probably still very concerned about that. But, from a Microsoft perspective, and you hit on some of that from Lenovo, Microsoft runs on trust. And so everything we're doing around AI, it's really centered and starts from that component. You already talked about, localizing models on devices so that data can stay local on device if and where a customer desires it to go. Like, it's really going to be dictated by the customer's requirements and really focused on privacy and security first. Without that trust built up, you're kind of at a loss, right? And so if we erode that, if we risk that in any possible way, AI just becomes a less effective tool, because if you're not trusting the results, if you're not trusting the data, if you're not trusting that it's not going to leak out and all those things, you're not going to be able to adopt it or use it as much. And so really, from a Microsoft perspective, we always start there first, and we build that into the foundation of everything that we do in terms of our products.
So, Brian, I want to dig a little more into that. How has AI challenged Microsoft's approach to creating innovation within PC technology?
Yeah, I think the challenge is more, centered on, we don't know yet all the different experiences that end customers are going to want, right? And so how do we try our best to stay ahead of the curve? And I think there's a lot of Microsoft-centric experiences that we've built in that we've gotten the feedback on, whether that be Windows Studio effects or some of the features within M365 and the Copilot system that take advantage and deliver on those experiences. And it's a challenge to solicit that feedback consistently and constantly and develop the products to kind of meet those needs. I think as we start getting into some of the more vertical use cases, in healthcare or in retail, how do, again, we stay ahead of what we think customers are going to want, and obviously work in partnership with all of our technology partners here to really kind of bring that to life. I'd say that's certainly one of the challenges. I kind of stepping back on the security and the privacy, that always remains a challenge, right? You have to stay ahead of that. And again, that's why I think we actually are intentional about taking our time, or when we recognize that there's maybe something that came out, such as recall, you saw us kind of roll that back to reevaluate how we can approach that more responsibly, because we had privacy concerns from our customers. So I think we always try to stay in front of that before it gets to market. But, we're in one big ecosystem and working with all of each other to kind of get that constant feedback loop. We're definitely not in the position of saying, like, here it is, this is our stance, and, this is take it or leave it. No, we're very adaptive. We're always looking at how we can improve. And again, keeping, some of those big nuggets like security and privacy at the center, and end user experiences at the center as well.
So then where is Microsoft seeing the most demand for AI and PC technology?
I wouldn't necessarily put it in AI PC technology yet. I think, again, we're really at the beginning parts of that. And I think the first element that we're seeing really right now around AI is generative AI use cases and improvement in productivity. So right now, what we're continuing to see, and this is supported by research from IDC, is it's a very inward focused look for organizations. I think we touched on this maybe in our first conversation as well, which is, right now, every customer out there is evaluating how they can best use AI to help employees get more productive, to reduce and lower operational costs and expenses. So it's that very inward focused view. And I think the PC technology right now is in a place of, how do we accelerate that further? How do we support that with the right platforms right now? So whether that be, just a modern Windows 11 PC that's in market, or whether that be an AI PC, a Copilot Plus PC, and those platforms, we're in that kind of that gray space right now of every customer's got slightly different needs, but really it's about focusing on end user productivity and driving those overall experiences.
Lee, let's take this over to you real quick, if I can. Lenovo estimates more than 60% of PCs shipped by 2027 will actually be AI capable. So where do you believe the demand for AI will actually be by then?
You could argue that by that time, especially, nearly everything shipping in the commercial space will be AI capable. And that's part of what I think Brian was touching on a minute ago. Like, there's a lot of definitions for what AI PC or AI capable are, right? But clearly we see that momentum. It's in some ways faster than, I've been in this industry 35 years, and faster than I expected to be embraced by customers as well as partners. And I guess what I will say is this: it's a little challenging to see. 2 years really is a long way away in a lot of senses. So we're listening very carefully, but the productivity piece of it and collaboration are obviously driving a lot of it today. I mean, just the ability to have your camera auto tune itself in a manner of speaking, or have your battery life managed by a PC that knows how to do battery life extension without kind of taking away the productivity, knows what you're working on, and doesn't diminish those things in the name of battery life. Stuff like that, I think, is low-hanging fruit. And time is something that you can't get back. If you have people trying to figure out how to get the sound settings right, or trying to fiddle with their camera and make it look better, or looking for a file that they're not quite sure where it was and they can't remember the name of that guy they were talking to, and those kind of tasks take people out of their flow, right? It's not a good productivity game. So a lot of what we see is pointed at those kinds of tiny cases that in additive, you get back an hour a week. Not only are you probably happier with what you've gotten done at the end of the week, you're probably happier throughout the week because a lot of little obstacles have been taken out of your way. The experience with the devices is becoming so much more immersive and, to use the word again, personal and personalized. So that, I think, is going to be what kind of overtakes the hype train. I feel like there's been so many big promises, and we had the same thing happen with the internet too, right? And a lot of that stuff sort of loop back around. But by 2027, I think what you're going to see is a lot of devices that feel super comfortable to use and really offer a very dynamic, whether it feels like it is to not of the users. I mean, it's one of those things, you don't notice what doesn't bother you, right? So the more intuitive and slick and just sort of responsive the device is, the more time people have to get their work done or get their play done or whatever it is you're using that device for. So that's what I foresee is a real tipping point toward embracing that as people begin to see the value of it and become less afraid of the dark things that really are having a lot of work done to make sure that they don't come to pass. I mean, not so much the Terminator as, what you're searching for or what you're doing, leaking out, breadcrumbs to the dark web kind of thing. Those are real concerns. And the way the structure is evolving is very responsible and very protected for the user and for their employers.
I do want to add one thing on here too. A key driver of demand is, and we've touched on it a lot, right, is going to be the different experiences. And I think what we're going to start seeing here in pretty short order, and again, the central part of that AI PC technology, the Copilot Plus PC technology, is really the new NPU chip, right? The neural processing unit. And so it's a whole new chipset, that ISVs like Adobe and McAfee and CrowdStrike and all these different, partners are going to have to be rewriting applications to take advantage of that. And so a big driver of demand is going to be, what does that ecosystem begin to look like? How does that develop out? How are we looking at, how those ISVs are recoding or rewriting application to take full advantage of the underlying silicon and the underlying OS to really drive those experiences? Right. And I think I mentioned this earlier too, right? Every customer has an opportunity right now to get creative and to think about what they want to provide to their end users. And partners who are listening to this should be starting to think about, how can you work with a customer? How can you develop out custom-made applications, custom-made experiences, leveraging the NPU, leveraging Copilot runtime and the APIs and all the technical pieces in that to really kind of drum up these new experiences? That's going to be a huge part of driving the demand, right? Without driving this, people will look at this maybe more as a commodity. And in fact, this is a whole new platform, a whole new place for us to go with this technology that I'm excited about what the next 6 months puts out, what the next year puts out. And I think the time frame on that, Lee, you're right. As we get through 2025, as we get through 2026, this just becomes more and more of an easy play for partners to lean into and for customers to really take advantage of.
Right.
Well, let's talk about those partners then real quick. And I'll ask this to both of you. Let's start with Lee. How are Lenovo and Microsoft coming together to offer solutions that best meet the needs of partners and their customers?
So, behind the scenes, there's a lot of things that Microsoft and Lenovo do together in the area of AI. Some of the enablement, for example, part of our AI Now tool that I mentioned earlier is using the Microsoft ethics engines, the safety checker, to ensure that nefarious things aren't being done with the AI tools. I think for us, it's the vast array of Copilot Plus PCs in our portfolio. I mean, almost any segment you're in, there is a product that offers the full range of that capability today, and it's just going to spread down through our portfolio over time to really make it accessible to just about anybody. On the partner side, we have such a huge array of sales and technical resources through our hubs, the Lenovo 360 hub, that really give our partners the ability to kind of build up their capabilities, the things they can offer through Microsoft and Lenovo, and to bring that to their customers to do something that's powerful.
Yep. From the Microsoft side, I'll center this on opportunity, right, as a whole. So when we look at IDC, because IDC is really kind of the source of truth for a lot of this information, AI, by and large, when you look between like 2024, 2027, something around a 30% CAGR is what's expected. When you look at generative AI, that increases significantly, something around 80 to 90% CAGR over the same time period. And so when you think about partner opportunity of where IT spend is going, it is going to invest in these AI kind of solution sets. And so what are we doing, to Lee's point, to really empower partners to build up these practices, to build up these technical chops and these capabilities to really drive that? The other number that I always love kind of putting out there is when you think about Microsoft as a technology stack, it's really central to such a big part of everything that a customer is using from a productivity, from an infrastructure perspective. And what we've always kind of relied on is another IDC report that shows how much profitability and revenue can partners drive from their services built on top of Microsoft technology, of which Copilot Plus PCs are part of that stack. And that's somewhere in the 8 to 10x range, right? That is the expectation from partners when they're thinking about services capabilities and offers that they're putting in the market. Of maybe there's a benchmark in there to say how much revenue can we drive on top of this technology, and then obviously deriving the profit from that. We have a number of programs. We do co-invest, obviously, with Lenovo and with our Silicon partners to really provide all the enablement tools, all the technical tools. We have our Microsoft partner program. I think we're leaning in really heavily into this space, and there's a really significant opportunity for partners to take advantage of this, and we're obviously here to help with those discussions.
All right, we got a couple more minutes here, guys, so let's wrap up on this one. I'm going to ask both of you. Let's start with Lee. What is one last thing that each of you believes partners need to know about the future of AI technology with PCs?
Wow, one thing. Well, I would say, knowing how transformative AI is for how we live and work, it's going to create all kinds of opportunities. So I think successful partners will maximize their resources on providing solutions along that journey. So getting to know what the resources we have through Lenovo, the portal, the partner portal that we have for education and service offerings and things that you can offer to your customers to help maximize your value to them. That's the best way to create a very enduring relationship, and one that isn't always based on a spreadsheet, but is based on value and mutual success. So that would be my thing. My leaving thing would be learn about what tools your major partners like Microsoft and Lenovo can offer you to go help make you successful along with your customers.
Yeah, it's a great answer. It's a big question. Where I kind of tend to go is when I think about AI, it's so big, it's so broad. And I think it's important for partners also to just understand how much of it is interconnected between all the different areas, right? So if you're a partner that focuses on selling devices, as an example, think about the impact of selling devices might have on expanding into productivity tools or expanding into infrastructure. And if you're a partner that's focused on infrastructure, kind of the inverse. And so much of this is kind of reliant on each other. And there's a big opportunity right now for partners to really dive in deep, think about their business in new ways, think about how AI can really drive new productivity opportunities, new revenue opportunities, and profit opportunities. And so that's where I tend to focus is really figuring out the interconnectivity between all of it.
Well, I know 2025 is going to be a huge year as far as AI and PC technology integration is concerned, and we started it off with two of the best out there. Lee and Brian, thank you so much for your time, and for all of you at home for tuning in to this edition of Inside the Channel. I'm your host, John Alba. We'll see you next time.